colossal choke job by the Los Angeles Clippers last night. That was terrible for them, that franchise. Yeah. And for the game of basketball, as a basketball pure fan, I would love to have seen the Lakers versus Clippers. That's what should have happened. But, that's how the game is in the bubble. It's been fun to watch. In any case, I'm excited to see Jamal Murray and Jokic, of course, LeBron and AD go up against them. It's going to be still a great NBA playoff Western Conference Finals. Eastern Conference Finals already blazing. The Heat winning the number 5 seed in the East, beating the Miami, beating the Celtics to go up 1-0 in the East. But we're here to talk football, so as I welcome you in, I'm going to go get my other monitor to make sure you all are there with me. A huge announcement from the governor's office here in, sorry. See, Brandy, no can hear you. Okay, Brandy, you can hear me now. I turned on the music because I was just rambling. You know how I ramble. Brandy knows how I ramble. She's had to hear it a lot. But the governor's office today in Hawaii announcing that the pre-travel testing, wherein someone must test and prove that they were tested for COVID and tested negative to be able to travel to Hawaii. Because currently, if you come to Hawaii, it's a 14-day quarantine, so you have to stay indoors for 14 days. And to me personally, that was, the biggest impediment, obviously, to the Mountain West or to Hawaii football being able to bring in opponents is being able to avoid the quarantine, which I'm not saying it was impossible, but obviously a huge impediment. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now, Brandy? You're right. My mic was down too, actually. But, a huge impediment to the return of sports is, local regulations. So we're going to look at that. We're going to talk about Hawaii football. But first, we're going to talk about what's tipping the iceberg right now. And that is the Big Ten announcement. On August 11th, we're going to go back. And on August 11th, the Big Ten announced that they would be postponing football. And they even doubled down 2 weeks later and said it's not coming back. So, players were Justin Fields, the quarterback of Ohio State, started a petition. There were parents that started a petition to bring back football, to reinstate football. And then right after that, Kevin Warren, the commissioner of the Big Ten, got a call from none other than the president of the United States. So I'm sure that helped a little bit too. So that guy took a victory lap on Twitter today. And honestly, in my opinion, I think he did help to bring the football season back. So, whether you want it or not, I think Trump did help to bring back football for the Big Ten, and obviously for political reasons as well. Let's be honest. I doubt he stays up watching Big Ten football. He's basically hated football ever since he couldn't get a franchise in the NFL and the USFL died. But that everything, we are living in a crazy time, and whether you are in support of football, whether you're in support of Trump, whether you're in support of COVID is real or not, we all literally are living in the same world and have to figure out a way to navigate all of that. And I think football is one of those parts of society that people are constantly either questioning its validity and why we need it right now. How essential is it? And that's combating with people who are saying, like, of course this is important for the the country to be able to have positive news and be able to move forward. So whatever you're feeling, the Big Ten said, hey, it doesn't matter what you think, it's the science, and they are going with the science, and they're going with daily testing. So that's a huge difference in what was announced before, is the daily testing, because that is basically a game changer, with the SEC saying they were going to test 3 days a week. And that is still kind of a lot, testing 3 days a week, and pretty intensive training, testing. And we talked about Dr. Scott Miskovich from Hawaii, who is overseeing that testing in the SEC, and how the SEC is not going to allow players who test positive to just somehow bypass the system, which is hard to imagine. Let's be honest, it's hard to imagine because there are kids that are one, FD paper away from one professor from not playing a certain week or not being able to be eligible. So, you think that coaches don't get involved, or you think that there's no pressure to get in the game? I mean, that's obvious. Is that, and kids want to play. Obviously, kids want to play. Every kid wants to play. I would tell you right now, even if a kid was probably told, like, let's remove some of the restrictions that we had over the year, science-based restrictions, like, I don't know, wearing helmets and stuff. I bet a lot of kids would still play. I bet a lot would still play because they love playing football that much, as dangerous as that would be. So it's hard for me to be like, okay, the kids want to play, so play. Like, obviously the kids want to play. I want to watch. If I just went by my desire to watch football and be a fan, that's not enough justification for bringing it back. But if we can make it safe, which is what the Big Ten and their committee on the return of play decided that they could do it safely. And these are the the major components. October 23rd weekend being the first weekend that they start, so possibly that Friday night or on Saturday. Probably the Saturday. So this is the Big Ten. Obviously, this is going to be after the start of the SEC, which still hasn't started yet. So it's funny because, yes, there is pressure for sure. Obviously, I'm going to get to that. I think Trump helping this, one. Two, pressure just from people in that region who, the Midwest is obviously a football-loving area, and people who, look forward to it every year, like the rest of us. So I think that is, a decent start date, October 23rd. They're going to start testing on September 30th. They said, so they start testing on September 30th. They'll be ready by October 23rd. It's worthy to note that the Council of Presidents and Chancellors all voted unanimously, so they're all together on this. Obviously, after they decided to, I believe the vote was 8-3. There's 11 teams in the Big Ten. But in terms of the August vote, so that changed. And the big thing that changed for everybody was the daily antigen testing and enhanced cardiac screening. Because the myocarditis, if we have people who are doctors, cardiologists, epidemiologists in the comments, please leave some messages. If you just want to, obviously leave a comment too, how you feel about this. I'd love to talk about it, because that's what we're going to talk about today or tonight while we have some time. It's 11:17 on the East Coast, so thanks for those who are tuning in from out there, because this is going to be a part of the future of the landscape of sports, and the Big Ten is obviously a Power 5 conference. So that's why this is big news, right? If the MAC decided that they were going to return to sports and announce that wouldn't be a big decision. But the Power 5, being the Big Ten, deciding to come back because they have daily testing. Okay, so let's talk about daily testing, right? Why that's so hard is because, well, tests are expensive, so you're going to test every day. Also, tests are not infinite. We don't have an infinite supply of tests. We actually are rationing tests in a lot of places. So this is going to require a lot of tests. So optically, whether you want to look at it or not, there will be detractors that are saying, why are we spending so much tests on football players, especially daily? So it's one test a day. Obviously, their technology is changing, so things are getting faster, and but that's very, very important. And I believe the science does back up the fact that if you do daily testing, that's obviously going to mitigate a lot of the risk of the disease spreading, just clearly. So I think, that's a positive. And apparently Trump did promise some of the nation's supply of tests, but they did say that they didn't take it. So that's worthy of note. But also having a chief infection officer on every campus that will oversee the collection and reporting. This is going to need to be someone who's super independent of the conference. It's just like in compliance. There's a reason why in some athletic departments, the compliance officer no longer reports to the AD. I wonder why. Maybe because the AD is signing their checks or helping them to go up the ranks, or I don't know. But clearly it's hard to be basically like an ombudsman or something for a company if you are afraid of reporting the actual results, because it could have adverse reaction, change something about your team that you don't want. Like, I don't know, one of your best players not playing for a week. And in the Big Ten, they're saying is 21 days you got to sit out. 21 days. So, um, yeah, that's a long time. So can you imagine if, I mean, you play 3 weeks, you test on a Saturday, does that 21-day count? Like you miss 4 games? I mean, so that's crazy. But as long as they can keep a tight ship, they probably don't anticipate it happening at all. What's worthy of note is that Major League umpire tested positive too. And people have been testing positive. And we're going to talk about that. Ed Orgeron, we're going to bring up his comments about everybody, most of the kids got it. I don't know where he's got this unscientific reporting of his own teams, but we're going to talk about that as well because, yeah. Oh, okay, good question. Brandy brought up the Big Ten stance on fans, and right now it's no fans. So this is all about TV money. What does this help with the Big Ten TV money? Obviously, TV money. And, they need to get that television drip if they want to, compete with the big boys, because that's a huge amount. It's a huge check that comes every year that goes to maintain all the other expensive things that they already have on their own campuses that they've been buying with all the money they've been getting from TV over all the years. So nobody's going to want to turn off the faucet of money even for 1 year. So there's a lot of motivation to bring in Big Ten football back. Obviously, there's a lot of motivation for fans to want to have football back. So I'm trying to be as objective as possible using science. Obviously, using my maybe my perspective of sports might be skewed because I put a higher price tag and a value on sports because I think of just as positive influence on the world and in society and teaching values of teamwork and for the fan, just joy and celebration. But at the same time, obviously I want my team to come back. How can we do it in a safe way? So that we're going to start there as well. Yep, it's all about money. Joanna says the Hawaii travel. Yeah, so we're going to bring that up. I put that in the caption, but Governor Ige obviously not pushing it back anymore, the quarantine. So October 15th of pre-travel, meaning you can get a test. And that, to me, you can get a test to fly to Hawaii. Because currently, if you fly to Hawaii, it's 14-day quarantine. That, to me, was a significant impediment for, Hawaii football to come back. Obviously, you can't have the opposing team come in 14 days early in quarantine. That's not going to happen. So that's huge. That's really huge. I think that changes a lot for UH. With that being said, let's talk about how the Big Ten is going to do their schedule. So here's Barry Alvarez talking about that.
In October 23rd, 24th, we will play 8 games plus one, a very unique Champions Week, where the teams from the East and West will match up and play one another, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, 4 versus 4, etc. With the championship game being played at the end of that week, I believe December 18th and 19th.
So repeat that then, Barry. So what you're saying is not only do we have the champions from each division playing one another, but the second-place teams, third-place teams, fourth-place teams, and so on down will play one another as well. Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct. Very unique scheduling. It gives everyone an opportunity to play 9 games.
Okay. Here we go. Now you can hear me. If you couldn't read lips, I was totally had my mic down so you could hear what Barry Alvarez was saying. But the major question is, will Big Ten teams be eligible for the college football playoff? Yes. Okay, as long as there's no delays, right? As long as there's no games pushed back, which is already happening. It's already happening in college football. Games are being pushed back. It's already happening in on campuses where there are breakouts. But as long as they push forward, and I'm going to talk about Ed Orgeron's comments, the coach at LSU. I'm going to play his clip pretty soon. I expect these conferences to just push forward, personally, regardless, just with the attitude that they have now, because I know it's kind of like a once, it's a go or not, for them. They don't want to have to cut the season off, but they see a path ahead. Whether it means, someone gets sick or someone gets badly sick, we're going to have to wait until then. Ethically, I think, until we see that, we don't know whether, it's going to strike us. I mean, clearly if someone dies, one person dies, that'll be one too many. I don't anticipate that happening. It's a possibility. And one will be too many. But, we've already had Indiana linemen in the ICU just from practice and getting it during practice. So you never know. But what is going to keep the season going? What is going to stop the season? We don't know. What are the thresholds going to be? Probably, and what they said with the Big Ten is they're going to have a percentage versus the percentage of positives versus the rest of the campus. So it's like 3.5%, 7.5%. So they're not going to stop with positives. They're just not going to stop. It's going to take a certain amount of positive, a percentage of positives, to stop. But will they be able to make it in time for the CFP? I thought this was funny, so let's play this clip.
CFP about the Big Ten's ability to participate?
Well, we're fortunate, Dave, to have the chair of the CFP as one of our athletic directors, Gary Barta, the AD at Iowa, and conversations with him.
Literally, that's all I wanted to play, because if your first answer is, well, the chair just happens to be one of the ADs in our conference, then case closed. You're going to get in. And that's kind of what the Big Ten is already banking on. And, of course, this has already been some controversy. The SEC, do the other conferences like that the Big Ten is coming back? No. They just released a poll, a top 25 poll, had all kind of names that probably wouldn't show up in that poll had there been other teams, but playing like the Big Ten. So they're not happy because they're eyeing 2 spots, a lot of them, to get into the college football playoff. But clearly the Big Ten will probably have one, as they always have one. So they're not going to be very happy about it. But yeah, I expect him to get in. But Ed Orgeron, he made some very interesting comments, and let's just listen.
What's going to happen with the COVID? I think that we've got a good handle of it, but once a kid gets it, the next man got to go up. And Mickey comes tell me, Jack comes tell me, this person tested positive, this person's going to be quarantined. They give me the number of days, and we got to make adjustments. Look, 2 weeks ago, we had everybody on our offensive line except 2 or 3 guys were out. We couldn't go any team. We adjusted very well, and we've got to make adjustments. But I think most of, not all of our players, but most of our players have caught it. So I think that hopefully they don't catch it again, and hopefully they're not for game. I'm not going to say all of them, but some players have caught it, and I don't know the percentage, but hopefully that once you catch it, you don't get it again. Now, I'm not a doctor, you know what I'm saying? I think they got that 90-day window, so most of the players that have caught it, we feel that they're going to be eligible for games. So we look at the players that have caught it, and we say, okay, this guy should be eligible for game. We look at the players that haven't caught it. We talk to them about being very, very careful so they're eligible for games. But we know that the players that haven't caught it, we have to have some backups in their position ready in case they catch it.
Now, I'm not saying Ed Orgeron is hosting COVID parties, but clearly he's along the line of thinking, and he's not wrong, because there's only been one person, I believe, ever, if I'm wrong, you can test me, that I've heard of in Hong Kong that actually tested twice and recovered and got coronavirus again. So I think Orgeron has a point, right? If my whole team gets it, we're all immune, right? So that's his philosophy. And to be honest, I don't see him changing that. I mean, it's not grounded in anything that's completely off illogical. But I think that is the philosophy that a lot of them are going with. Anyways, we're gonna push through. Like, you get a positive. Oh well, do you feel sick? No, probably not, because most people don't feel right. Most people don't feel sick. Most people don't know that they have it. So, when they do, and that is concerning. But that also means that there's a very slim chance, especially for college football players, to get really sick. So the risk is low for someone to get really sick. That's what we're saying right now. Long term, I don't know. So there was some scrutiny of the myocarditis. They did a survey, I think it was Ohio State, of 26, or was Maryland, somewhere, like 26 student athletes that had COVID, and they tested their hearts, right? And they found out that four of them were consistent with myocarditis. 26 isn't very many people, obviously, but 20, when you consider that usually it's like 25 out of 100,000. So if they managed to find 4 people that didn't have myocarditis, that would be almost impossible to find 4 people. So clearly there is, and that's why they're stepping up the monitoring, the heart monitoring. The SEC is doing that as well, and the Big Ten is doing that as well. But here's what they say. A minimum testing guidelines. So this is the SEC. I'm going to talk about the SEC since they're like, the SEC. So what they're doing, everybody else is going to have to do, at least, usually. We said the 3 days, and they have to do at least the PCR testing as well. So there's different kinds of tests, at least 3 days prior to the assigned competition. So this is not daily, right? We're talking about daily when we talk about the Big Ten. They're like saying every day we're going to test. That's a huge difference between testing 3 days a week. And obviously that also calls into question, how can you afford all those tests? How can you, make it work? I mean, there's still question marks about it. Let's be honest, even for the Big Ten. But there are some interesting takes that I heard, and I'll start with Mike Wilbon from, pardon the interruption, on ESPN. He's a Northwestern guy. He's a Big Ten guy as well. So we'll hear what he has to say.
Science has evolved. And by the way, it's evolved for the Pac-12 too, but they have states. And it's not like some other southern states where you can have a head coach, Coach O, say, yeah, most, if not all our guys have had or have the virus, and we're just going to keep trucking. That's not the case in some states, and those are Pac-12 states mostly, but also, Tony, the Big Ten. They're also going to have, when the rapid antigen tests allow them to figure out things about the virus, who has it, without tracing necessarily, that they couldn't figure out 2 months ago. Also, being cleared, players, by cardiologists in terms of myocarditis concerns. These are huge things that the Big Ten presidents, and I guess there's some chancellors in there too, so we need to have assurances about this. I don't give a damn about the optics or the PR value, or that some people in other states think they just did a flip-flop. If they did a flip-flop, fine. Get it right. Do the best thing you can for the health and safety of your players as you see fit, and everybody else can go to hell.
Okay, interesting comments, right? Mike Wilbon. First of all, he brought up the Pac-12 and why this is different for the Pac-12 and the Big Ten. And whatever the Pac-12 happens is probably going to be consistent with what the Mountain West does. So, regardless of what Craig Thompson says, and we're going to get into this today, the Pac-12 is going to have something to do with this, probably. But let's start with what Wilbon said. Yes, if it can be done, let's do it. He sounds very encouraging. He sounds like, what he's saying is what everybody's saying. Is the health and safety of student athletes has to be first. So how can you ensure that? And of course, it's going to be hard. You can't ensure them to be completely safe. I mean, they're already acknowledging that it's going to be positives, that there will likely be positives, and what thresholds there will be to be able to continue to play. So, that's significant for the Pac-12 as well, because there's pressure on them as the last of the Power 5 conferences to be able to start playing. But regardless of whatever Craig Thompson does, it doesn't matter if he is or not. Obviously, it sounds like he wants to. There's going to be a lot of going on before he whether he wants to or not. Because there are rumblings everywhere. I did get someone, I won't even say, but I've been hearing all day. Don't worry. People text me all the time, message me all the time, all kinds of stuff. And I've been hearing it most of the day. I just got something. But, it's going to be, difficult for, obviously, everything that's going on in the Pac-12, especially what's going on right now in the states that the Pac-12 schools are in with the fires. It's hard to even prioritize football. So, but I would imagine that if the West Coast wants to play, which the Mountain West is on the West Coast, you're going to have the Pac-12 somehow, maybe on board or somehow connected in some way, because so much, they share, like the California schools. We have Cal State schools, there are UC schools in the Pac-10, in the Pac-12. So there will be a lot to go into it. I don't doubt that the Mountain West has been working on ways to get back. Let's face it, we make money when we play football. Let's face it, okay? Because I'm sure they want to do this for fans who really support the team, and I'm so honored as a fan to have what I want and have so many people working on it. But pretty sure there's other motives involved as well. So, with Craig Thompson saying that there are subgroups obviously within the conference returning, and that's what NCAA model is full of. As someone who's been a part of it for 13 years now, making committees, splitting them up, and then talking about safety and health first of all. That's like the pattern. So this is just a part of the pattern, and we're getting closer. I would say that we're significantly closer with the announcement, by Governor Ige, that the pre-travel testing or test program for visitors to Hawaii to bypass any 14-day quarantine is to take the test. I think it's 3 days prior. You can go look it up, whatever it is. It's going to start on October 15th. So if the Mountain West wanted to start on, in October, there's a possibility that they might start in October as well if they got it together on the same day as the Big Ten. That would work out because I think at this point for the state of Hawaii as well, I don't think there's going to be pushing back anymore. I think at this point there's a feeling even within at the state capitol that the state needs to open in any way anyways, just to save parts of the tourism industry that are being hit very hard. But yeah, I don't see the Mountain West doing anything until the Pac-12 makes the move first. But it's possible, and it's possible that the Mountain West does it without the Pac-12 as well. I'm not saying it's not possible, because at this point we're working within conferences. We're not. UH is not playing for no Mountain West school at this point. Even if we jumped in right now, is going to be playing for college football playoff. That's just not going to happen. There's no non-conference season, first of all, so. Nobody's going to have a strong enough schedule, and that's another thing. There's going to be even within conference, within the Power 5, there are teams that'll win their division, maybe win the conference, and not have a great season record because their division, they had Rutgers. If they're on one side of the Big Ten, what's the weaker side of the Big Ten, and they win that? There's a possibility that they don't get in because their schedule is weak. So there's a lot of it's going to be different for everybody. But if we wanted to work for the Mountain West, obviously we carve out a solid 8 to 9 weeks of the year. Doesn't have to be in October. Doesn't have to be in November. Doesn't have to be in December. It would be nice if it was one of those. But I think that's something that needs to be remembered as well. Yes, and Brandy reminded me the NCAA approved men's basketball for November. So that's where the NCAA finally emerges from the shadows, because like we said, in Division I football, at least in FCS football or FBS football bowl subdivision football, NCAA is powerless to the Power 5. That's literally the Power 5. They have all the power. But the NCAA emerging from the shadows to tell us that on November 25th basketball can start. So, that'll be interesting to see how far that goes. I hope, and I'd hope we can have fans. But even if we found a way in arena to distance, I think it's possible. I think there's a lot of possibility from distancing and. Having, and this is something last week, if you saw the show 1 week ago, I was in Utah. I was at an event, at a sporting event, at a distance sporting event in Sandy, Utah to watch Real Salt Lake and LAFC play in Major League Soccer. And, just to get the experience of being in a stadium that was distance, it was fun. But it's a different experience. It's a very different experience. I mean, it's just weird. It's very weird. It's like a... And of course, I went to MLS game. I didn't go to NBA game, an MLB game, or something. But even MLS games are usually a little bit more intense and exciting. And the fans were getting into it. I'm not saying they weren't, but it's kind of weird when people are just like patched around, the sideline. There's not as much atmosphere. Put it that way. It's still fun, and obviously I'm gonna go. Air Force Academy. Sean says Air Force Academy. That doesn't matter. I mean, Air Force. Well, I mean, why would they? Why would they care what the MWC thinks? I mean, they're playing Army and Navy. They're not playing Notre Dame. So that's why the Air Force Academy is going to go and play those two teams. But that is also a reason why I think Kenyu Matalolo, he was a little bit upset about the Commander-in-Chief trophy and having one team only have to play 2 games, which is understandable. But it's also difficult just to play 2 games. It's like you play one. I don't even know how spread out. I don't know what the schedule is, but I don't know if the games are spread out. If somebody knows when they play, Air Force plays Army and Navy, but that's difficult too, to just play for 2 games. Yeah, he did. You're right. And I saw Matalo did say something about the Pentagon, Brandy. I don't know. You have to remind me I know he apologized for something. But yeah, it is going to be murky. But this year as well, players don't have to worry about losing their eligibility. That's another thing that's wonderful. So it's kind of like a free year for kids in school. So there's more liberty there with not having to worry about burning red shirts or stuff like that. So that's a huge alleviation of worry for schools. If they don't get on the court or if they only get on for a few games, because that's also a possibility too. Already we've had teams, have to push games back in football. UCF hasn't played all their games. They had one opponent that had to push their game back. So it's been happening. It's been happening around, and it'll keep coming back. Yes, that would mean that, Sean. You can't. If the November and NCAA is different. So Sean asked in the comments, which is a good question. Does that mean all games prior to November 25th are canceled for men's basketball? Yes. Because NCAA will be the ones that'll make, they determine practice times. They determine, periods of contact periods, dead periods for recruiting. That's all restricted within the NCAA's, purview. And that is in agreement with the rest of the Division I schools in their division, D2 in their division, D3 in their division, right? They all follow the same rules. In Division I football, that's the anomaly, right? It's like, Division I football, okay, well, you guys have more power than me. I mean, do you know how much money? First of all, let's look how much money those Power 5 commissioners make and all their coaches make. Okay, go look at that for one thing. I mean, I don't want to hear anybody complain about pro players making too much money. If you watch college football and you are accusing professional players of being overpaid millionaires, I do not go to football games to watch the coach. I don't go to SEC games to watch the SEC commission. I don't go to UCLA games to watch the Pac-12 commission. That's not what I do. But why is the money so high? Why are the salaries so high? So before we go into this overplay, that's one thing that bothers me, because please, if you want to talk about college football, you want to talk about integrity, you want to talk about college sports, you want to talk about exploitation, it's happening. So let's be honest. And whatever, I'm complicit in it, and a lot of us are. We go to the games as well. So I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying let's state the obvious, is that it's not going to be just simple to get back on the court or in the field and do all these things and put players in positions where they may feel unsafe while their coaches are making a lot of money, while their schools are making money from TV. So that's the icky part, right? Because as a fan of me, of course, I want to see this play. I want to see a normal season, but I also don't want to have a season that just broken up in the middle of it and just whatever, just over. Like, what kind of season would that be? I don't want a season where it's one game. Oh, and then is this game going to happen? Dang, too many guys tested positive. Got to postpone. Or one of our best players or the top 2 quarterbacks test positive. I mean, it might be fun. I don't know if you're about to play Boise or something, and you find out like some of their best players test positive. I mean, I'm sure a lot of teams wouldn't be too sad about that. I mean, I'm not wishing that on anybody. And I know Boise already had some issues, so hopefully everything's well there. But that's kind of a weird part of sports that we don't have to worry about. I don't want to worry about whether the other team. Of course, injuries happen. Yes, so injuries happen and they can change the game. Anything. You could sprain your ankle walking down the jet bridge on the plane to get to the team you're playing. So that's possible. But we also have to understand that there's so much money that's being poured in and so much money that's not being distributed to people who are expected to go back, expected to put in, because people want to go to the games to watch the players play, not the officials officiate, not the coaches coach, but watch the players play. And that is, what's going to be something that's going to be scrutinized for a long time. And that's just what's happening right now with the return to play is, conditions. So hopefully the Mountain West can do it. But there are, Bomani Jones also gave a very good, a very hot take today. So let's listen into that as well.
Then, if they have access to adequate testing, and they seem to have access, if they have access to adequate testing, and they seem to have access to more testing than they would have when they made this announcement before, if they've got access to testing and the ability to make this safe, then go ahead and do it. The problem is, I have to trust them that these things are actually true. Now, this becomes a convoluted mix because part of perhaps them having access to testing is the fact that the president of the United States offered this swing state heavy conference some of the emergency stack that they have, which is something he probably would not have done with the Pac-12 because those states probably aren't going to wind up swinging, right? That's part of what gets us here. But it takes me to a point I make all the time. Credibility is like insurance. You don't need it until you need it. And so they're putting in some provisions that should be encouraging. For example, if a player tests positive, you're withheld from activities for 21 days. That seems like something that would be good. There are these thresholds about certain numbers of players on a team. If they get them, then the whole team can't play. The problem is when you don't trust the people who are doing this, you've got to wonder, since those thresholds are so stringent, are the schools going to be honest about the fact that guys are testing positive? What's going to happen? We had this happen with these schools in the SEC who wouldn't give us testing numbers, and then you have a guy like Ogeron come out and be like, oh, yeah, everybody had it. Just thought we'd let you guys know that. Hopefully they don't get it again. So why should I trust these people when they're the ones that get all the money and the ones that they're sending out there to do this are the ones who get none of it? I don't trust a single bit of it. All I can do is cross my fingers and hope that this goes, because most of us don't know enough to know medically whether they're doing the right thing or not. We just got a bunch of people who have not earned our trust, and it is a dereliction of duty from the people who are in our jobs to take the word of the Big Ten at every turn and just be like, oh, yeah, well, they say it's cool. Let's just go ahead and get into it. They deserve a serious level of scrutiny, and you're a sucker if you don't give it to them.
Wow. So that was a good take. I mean, that was, a great take from Bomani Jones in that we have to be very aware of the motives that are being involved. Because for a lot of us as fans, right, this is, there's no motives behind anything that I do for Hawaii sports fans or for myself, other than the emotion that I feel, the joy that I feel, the rush that I feel of being a fan. That's number one, especially of University of Hawaii football. I mean, there's nothing, I don't think anybody could take money to have to watch a team who mostly lose, my whole life has lost, which is, just a fact of life. But why a lot of us keep coming back is that we love this team and we love the camaraderie around it. And we love sports and we love, being there with our friends and tailgating and traveling. Doesn't mean that administrators have that same love. Doesn't mean that state officials have that same love. But what they do love is that green, though, that comes from the TV and that comes from, extracting wealth from players that they just have to give a scholarship back, if that. for compensation. So, that is a very important points that Bomani brought up in terms of, who do I trust? Who am I looking toward at this time when I am being told, doctors, officials in different places, who are also football fans or being paid by universities. There is a lot of discrepancies, but ultimately, I hope this all goes well. I want to see Mountain West football come back. I miss Hawaii football, but I want it to be done safely as well. I want it to be done in a way that we can have the whole season, or at least, at this point, we would just have the conference season, which would be good. It'd be great to win the conference. Be great to, even play 8 games plus 1, like the Big Ten is doing. And I think it would, raise a lot of spirits. I'm not saying that it's going to be a perfect situation. I think it is nerve-wracking to know that somebody would probably get sick, and you just hope that nothing would happen to them. But, you don't know. So, it's very important to always remember. With that being said, like I said, today, a big announcement, Governor Ige in Hawaii announcing pre-travel testing program beginning October 15th. So that is huge for being able to have visitors come to Hawaii, which is going to be, was the first barrier. Now that's cleared. So who knows? Brandy has a question, another good question. So does this mean that all conferences will be giving enough tests to test all the athletes daily with all sports? And you know what? I'm pretty sure that's not the case for all sports. And there's a huge Title IX issue with that as well. And that will likely be brought up at some point. Well, first of all, even if they get through the season, right? We just get through the season. We don't know what long-term stuff is going to happen. We don't know what's going to, we don't know what kind of lawsuits might be filed later on by players or athletes. The fallout will be longer. And that's the thing. That's the good thing for college football is that we can get it right now. We don't have to wait. If we just say right now, right, the Big Ten is like, yeah, we want to start. And October 23rd is literally 5 weeks from now. So they're just like, yeah, 5 weeks, let's do it. And that's a much easier way of, making sure things go by smoothly if you can control the conditions right off the bat. There's a lot of talk of numbers going up. Cases are going to rise. I feel like cases have already risen, to be honest, already higher than I ever expected them to be. So I'm not sure that's going to have a huge effect unless people are just dropping dead like flies, which would be really terrible. I'm not saying that would happen, but I'm not sure what would take anyways. I don't think any significant outbreak could stop because that's how, strong the sports world is. And for good and for better and for worse. Obviously, I don't agree with everything that's done in sports. I'm there for the game. I'm there for this fan. But I understand the business side. I enjoy, the financial side of it as well, and the political side of it, and the platform that the athletes have, college and pro. That's excellent. That's all a part of the sports experience. But there's a lot of us that just want it to happen. So, but the absolute worst thing in the world would just to be cardboard every game, like this guy right here. The first game at SoFi. Oh, there I am. So I hope I had a good time. I'm just gonna bring this up because I needed to play this little clip video. There's a gigapixel that they took. This is right before the Rams versus Cowboys opening game at SoFi. This is very difficult. I've been waiting years for this first game at SoFi, and I'm literally cardboard, which I have to pay more for them to mail it to me, but I'm getting that. But look at that alone is not how you're a fan. I think it's cool, it's unique, it's different, but that's not the experience. That's not what I want. I want to be in the building. It's just a cheapened version of the experience of being there for the first game is to have your face there. But I guess I can say that for the rest of my life, which is cool, because I also had a newborn baby sitting next to me, which is cool, and a dog in front of me. But that's fun, and I appreciate teams that are trying to go out of their way to make the experience more enjoyable for fans. But at the end of the day, we want to get back in the stadium. We want to be in the stadium. We don't want to be watching on TV or watching somewhere. So it's tough. I mean, I get everybody's concerns too. I'm just like you. It's tough. Brandy said, so people that have recovered from COVID still have issues with their respiratory systems. Are all players that have tested positive being closely monitored? So, yeah, Brandy's right. There have been people with long-term effects. Even those that didn't have any symptoms at all. So the myocarditis, myocarditis, go look it up. Inflammation of your heart. And they found that players who were testing positive also, and this is an issue too, what we're susceptible to, even by race, right? Sickle cell testing, they don't really do anymore. But it's still found in a lot of black athletes, student athletes, black people. I mean, and that's saying like, oh, we don't need to test it for it anymore because it doesn't affect certain groups. So, I mean, that's a question as well. It's like, oh, this myocarditis, it ain't that bad. I mean, which is really what the Ohio State physician said today. Like, you shouldn't. I mean, first of all, they attacked the sample size, which is fair. Okay, because in science, you want to have a decent sample size. But still, if you had 4 people that showed signs in 26, that's, like, significant. That's 20%. Well, not 20, less than 20%. 16%, of the people you tested. When the world data is, like, 0.0025%. Is what is shown in the rest of the world. So there's definitely going to be people that will get it. They've already admitted that. And there will be athletes with long-term effects. So are you able to go are you able to justify it or not? That's the question. That's the ultimate question, is how much can you stomach when you watch? Because I don't know, US has already stomached 190,000 plus COVID deaths. A very small fraction, 9/11, big deal, which it was, and it should be. That's a lot of people that died in 9/11. Infinitesimally or exponentially more people have already died and will continue to die. But, we stomach it and we're like, okay, well, the game must go on. So that is ultimately, at the end of the day, as for us as sports fans, is a question we ask ourselves. I mean, I know that even for me, going to a game last week in Utah, a distance game, a lot of people are like, whoa, I can't believe you go to that game. Like, that's crazy. Or, like, that's, irresponsible or something. So there are always going to be comments, about what we do. So it's definitely up to our responsibility to, at least take care of the people around us, wear a mask, distance. Like, those are so simple. Wearing a mask and distancing is really simple. Like, that's literally all, I'm not saying all we need to do, but that's like the minimum, but would still go such a long way in terms of slowing the spread. And that's what we want to do. We just want to slow the spread. But we also want to, bring football back. And I know a lot of us who have, been waiting for this or wait for the start of football season every year. It's hard. It's hard to stomach sometimes the thought that we might not have, football. But ultimately, what we all need to do is take a step back and evaluate why we need football. And for me, football is so much part of my life. It's part of what I do. It's part of the joy that I get from my life and the things that I do. And I want to be back in the stands. So even if football does come back, a lot of them not even going to have fans. So that's not even as fun anyways. But it's still going to be fun to look at. Cardboard waiting is a social distance. Yeah, I guess cardboard, you're immune. Who would have thought? But you don't want to just be cardboard. We don't want to just be cardboard. We want to be real fans. We want to be in there. I mean, SoFi Stadium, $5 billion stadium, which a lot of my own money, which could have been, I don't know, put in a house or something that I could live in and not just use 8 times a year, 9 times a year, 10 times a year with preseason, whatever. But this is how much I love football and the fans and this company, Hawaii Sports Fans, and all the experiences and the wonderful, adventures that I take people on. That's more important to me than anything else. And the stadium is a part of it, a part of the future of this company, a part of the future of the world of sports. The world of sports, SoFi Stadium stands alone, really, as the next phase of where sports is headed, and how gaudy and the stadiums will get, but also how it's gonna start blending in, just like the new Aloha Stadium. We want it to blend in with the rest of of the community, building wise, having condos there or whatever. That's a part of the trend of stadiums. So SoFi is definitely one of those that is trends that is trending in the way that we're going to see a lot of stadiums go. But it's just unfortunate. I would have loved to have been there. I think anybody knows that the first game of any building, to christen that building, you want to have fans. So it was kind of weird. It was cool on Sunday Night Football. I guess everybody got to watch the first game ever, but it would have been better to have fans. So that's my cardboard self there. But that's just all I had tonight. I wanted to really, share some excitement, but also share some realness with you folks. I want football season to come back. I want everything to be normal again. I want to be with my front row crew at Aloha Stadium and watching all the games. And I want everyone to be safe. I don't want anybody to end up in the hospital or end up sick. Of course, a very slim chance, but it's definitely still a possibility. So there's a lot to juggle, but I know a lot of you here who are watching who tune in a lot are very savvy sports fans and understand the nuances of the game and the college game, and I hope I can help you in any way with that and your continued enjoyment of the game. But that's all I had for tonight. Maybe next week, maybe Sunday on our show, I'll say Mountain West football is back. Who knows? Maybe next week, Wednesday. Maybe Pac-12 will be back tomorrow. Who knows? Not counting on it, but things are changing, and hopefully in the right direction for all of us. That's all I got for today, guys. See you next time. Aloha.